Hi everyone. As you can see, I've got a multiplication table up here because in this video, we are going to look at and go into a deep dive of the multiplication table and the multiplication facts. So I always get the question from teachers and parents, how can I get my student or child to learn their multiplication facts better? And it's a difficult one because we've kind of moved away from that rote type learning and moved into a bit more of a conceptual. But having said that, it is really important for students to be able to memorize their multiplication facts. So in this video, I'm going to go through some strategies and I'm going to go through some of the unique properties of the multiplication table. All right, so let's make a start. So as you can see, the first thing that we notice is it's in an array, and it's in a 10 by 10 array. And I only go up to 10 when I'm teaching the multiplication because the 11 and 12 multiplication facts can be learnt using the distributive strategy or the split strategy. So we're only going to learn, or only going to go through the numbers or the facts up to 10. So we have a 10 by 10 array, which means that I have an array of 100. I don't know if students actually make the connection between the fact that if I was to multiply 3 by 5, it would form a 3 by 5 array, which would contain 15 boxes, or a grid of 15. So all of our multiplication facts, and in our multiplication grid in particular, they form an array. So that's the very first thing that I wanted to show you. Next, I want to look at commutativity, the commutative law. So the commutative law states that it doesn't matter which way I multiply my two numbers, so which way the factors are, they will still give me the same answer. And what I mean by that is I just did a 3 by 5 multiplication. So if I do a 5 by 3, I still get 15. But now my array or my grid has been rotated 90 degrees. So it doesn't make a difference. I still get 15, whether I multiply 5 by 3 or whether I multiply 3 by 5. This means that in our array, we can now remove half of those facts. So 1 times 2 is the same as 2 times 1. So anything in the blue is just a repeat of what we've just done. So the other thing we notice is that when we multiply anything by 1, then we get that number. So this is called the identity property. So anytime if I multiply 1 by 1, I'm going to get 1, 2 by 1, I'm going to get 2, 3 by 1, etc. Okay, so anytime a value is multiplied by 1, we get that number itself. So this is represented in the pink. So there's a very straightforward thing for students to understand, and that removes another 19 facts. They're gone. We don't need to worry about those. Next, we're going to look at anything that's multiplied by 2. So when we multiply anything by 2, we simply double that number. So we can see here that doubling is a pretty simple concept for students. One of the first things that they learn when they start learning to multiply is they learn to double. So doubling, pretty straightforward. That removes another 19 facts from that. That's quite easy to remember. Now we're down to everything in the white. So next, we can look at our tens, because our tens is the other one that's quite simple. So anytime we multiply anything by 10, we really are just moving it one place value up. Now, I don't like using the term adding a 0, because we're not really adding a 0. Because anytime we add a 0 to something, it doesn't change the number. So what we're actually doing is we are moving it one place value to the left. So now instead of saying 1, we are now saying 10, etc. So we know that our 10 timetables they're quite simple. We can move on. Next, our fives. So our fives times tables are quite easy. For a lot of students, they can start recognizing those patterns. So they count by fives and it starts to become a little bit more straightforward. Or they can multiply by 10 and then half. That's another strategy that they can use as. So you can see that the number of facts that we have to memorize is slowly decreasing. So all of these things that have been colored on your screen can actually be problem solved or reasoned through. So they don't have to be committed to memory. They can be looked at quite simply. Next, we've got our square numbers. So our square numbers are probably introduced at about year 5 or 6. And once we understand our square numbers, they can be also quite straightforward to remember. So we know that any of these numbers, they form a square in the array. So that is 1, we have a 1 by 1. 2, we have a 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4, 5 by 5. So these are our square numbers. Next up, we've got our 3 facts. So the way that you can look at 3 is it's double and then one more group. So if I want to look at my 4 multiplication, so I want to multiply 4 by 3. So I have 3 groups of 4 now. So I can double my 4, that's 8, and then I can add one more group of 4, and that will give me 12. So that's one way. If you know how to double, if you know your 2 facts, then we know how to figure out what our 3s are. Next, we've got our 4s. 4s are just double and double again. And learning and introducing, getting the students to practice those things instead of having to commit them to memory, eventually what will happen is the students will be able to reason their way through, and while doing that, they will become a part of their memory storage. So they'll start to remember those very, very quickly, and if they don't, then they'll have a strategy for being able to work it out. Now, we're down to 6 facts that we need to memorize, but still got a trick up my sleeve. That is by 9. Now, I'm going to do a whole video on the 9 multiplication facts because there's so many really interesting ways of figuring out the 9 tables, the 9 multiplication facts, and it's a really cool and really fun way for students to do it. But if you do multiply by 10 and take one group away, or we can do the finger strategy. So here I've got 10 fingers, and if I take 1, so that's 1 multiplied by 9, that's going to give me 9. 2 multiplied by 9, that's going to give me 1 and 8, 18, etc. So 3 multiplied by 9 is going to give me 2, and 7, that's 27. The other thing that you have to remember with your 9s is the 2 digits that make up your product are going to add to 9 as well. So that is a really important point. Now, let's take a look. We are down to 42, 48, and 56. So these are the ones that they may have to commit to memory. Personally, 56 is the hardest for me because 42 and 48 just seem to have a little bit more of a musical ring to them, like 6 7s are 42, 6 8s are 48. But 56 is the tricky one. So 7 8s are 56. And there you have it. A whole bunch of strategies for being able to work out the multiplication facts. And in the end, really, students will only need to memorize the 3 facts. So try it with the students in your classroom and start talking about having these conversations. There you have it. Hope you enjoyed.